Donald Trump is absolutely furious tonight, and for once, he can't hide it. A Supreme Court justice just went public, demanding that Trump himself show up in court. No lawyers, no delays, no excuses. The power dynamic has flipped, and Trump's meltdown behind the scenes is pure chaos. Sources say his team is scrambling. Judges are refusing private calls, and one justice is calling this the collapse of accountability. This isn't some rumor. It's a courtroom rebellion unfolding live. The truth's out, the cover-up is gone, and Trump's rage is boiling over. What happens next could shake American democracy itself.
I'd love to be campaigning instead of doing this. I built a great company.
Former President Donald Trump came to this courthouse in Manhattan, making a rare voluntary appearance before a judge, not in one of the 4 criminal cases against him, but as a defendant in a lawsuit that could upend his business empire. Now, last week, the judge in this case, Arthur Engoron, he ruled that Donald Trump committed years of fraud by giving banks and insurance companies and others financial statements that inflated his wealth by billions of dollars and inflated the value of assets like skyscrapers and golf courses. As punishment, the judge said that he's taking away some of Donald Trump's companies, and that could lead to taking away some of his prized assets like Trump Tower. At lunch, he called for the judge's disbarment, said he should face criminal charges for his handling of this case. This trial could last 3 months, but Donald Trump was here today. He may be back tomorrow, and at some point, he's going to testify as a witness.
So, former President Donald Trump made a pretty rare voluntary trip to a Manhattan.
I'm going to say this as clearly as possible. When a president treats the courts like an inconvenience, that's not strength. That's the first step toward impunity. And this week, even the Supreme Court's Chief Justice effectively said, enough. That's a generational moment for the rule of law. Here's what's actually happening. In New York, a judge found Donald Trump liable for years of fraud, with penalties that cut through the glossy brand and hit the core business model. Separate from that, the White House has tried to bulldoze through the independence of regulators at the FTC and even at the Fed, running straight into a wall of law that's been standing for nearly 90 years. Put simply, the institutions are pushing back. Let's set the stakes in plain English. A president doesn't get to fire independent commissioners because they're inconvenient. That's not how the FTC or the Fed or the SEC were built. Those guardrails exist so your mortgage, your groceries, your paycheck don't become collateral in a power struggle. This is about whether neutral rules can stand up to political pressure.
Trump committed years of fraud by giving banks and insurance companies and others financial statements that inflated his wealth by billions of dollars and inflated the value of assets like skyscrapers and golf courses. As punishment, the judge said that he's taking away some of Donald Trump's companies, and that could lead to taking away some of his prized assets like Trump Tower. At lunch, he called for the judge's disbarment, said he should face criminal charges for his handling of this case. This trial could last 3 months, but Donald Trump was here today. He may be back tomorrow, and at some point, he's going to testify.
When the administration tried to oust FTC Commissioner Rebecca Slaughter without cause, the courts moved fast. First a district court, then a divided D.C. circuit, said the firing violated long-standing protections for independent agencies. That's not partisan. That's precedent. And the Supreme Court took the case because this fight is bigger than one commissioner. It's about whether Humphrey's executor, the bedrock 1935 precedent that shields independent regulators from presidential retaliation, survives. Arguments are set for December 8th. That's the showdown. On the Federal Reserve front, another red line held. Attempts to remove Governor Lisa Cook ran into the same reality. The Fed's independence isn't a talking point. It's a legal structure. For now, Cook remains on the job while litigation plays out. That matters for your interest rates and your savings. Thread the through line. When the law meets raw power, the question is whether institutions bend or hold. And this spring, Chief Justice Roberts did something he rarely does. He publicly rebuked Trump's demand to impeach a judge who ruled against him. That wasn't a partisan flourish. That was a defense of the judiciary's legitimacy. How did Trump respond? Not with legal arguments on the merits, but with attacks on judges, threats of retaliation, and cries of persecution. It's the same playbook we've seen from day one. If the umpire calls a strike, accuse the umpire of rigging the game. Let's talk New York again, because the facts still matter. Judge Arthur Engeron found that Trump's financial statements inflated assets and wealth for years. Mar-a-Lago, Trump Tower, the whole package. On appeal, a higher court later threw out the massive monetary penalty. But here's what defenders avoid saying out loud. Dismissing a penalty isn't the same as declaring innocence. The factual findings and the court's description of deceptive practices remain part of the record. Zoom out. The president's removal power has already grown in recent years. Cases like Salah Law chipped away at constraints on the executive. It's the court now blesses firing independent commissioners at will. You don't just get faster politics, you get politicized enforcement. Antitrust cases could disappear with a phone call. Consumer protection could whipsaw with every election. Markets hate that kind of chaos, and families pay the price through predatory fees and fragile oversight. That's why Humphrey's executor endures, not because of nostalgia, but because it keeps referees on the field who answer to law, not to fear. If that line breaks, the damage won't be loud. It'll be quiet, technical, and everywhere. The scam calls that should have been shut down, the merger that shouldn't have gone through, the rate hike that wasn't debated on the merits. Here's the heart of it. A democracy doesn't rely on the character of one leader. It relies on systems that constrain bad character. Courts issue orders, presidents comply, agencies enforce rules, presidents don't stack the deck when they lose. And when those norms are tested, we find out whether our institutions are paper tigers or living guardrails. In March, the Chief Justice signaled that the judiciary will not be bullied into silence. In the fall, lower courts told the White House, you can't sideline independent regulators without cause. In December, the Supreme Court will tell us how much of that guardrail remains. This is the line between a country of laws and a country of men. We've been here before. We know what happens when we choose wrong. So no, this is not about whether you like Donald Trump. It's about whether any president can punish watchdogs, ignore court orders, and then call judges corrupt when they enforce the rules. If we normalize that, every future president inherits a bigger hammer, and every one of us lives with more arbitrary power and less accountability. We can argue policy in the open. We should, but the moment we let a leader treat the law like a suggestion, we trade in the one thing that protects the unpopular, the outnumbered, and the ordinary. Neutral rules, fairly enforced. That's not naive. That's the American promise at work. And in a week of noise, one clear message cut through. From the courthouse steps to the Supreme Court's marble halls, the law still speaks. The only question is whether we'll listen.